Reading 33 in private wealth management is portfolio management for institutional investors. So far we have discussed private individual investors, and now we are moving on to institutional investors. So this reading is almost theoretical mostly. It provides the overview of institutional investors, that who are institutional investors, what are the major kinds of institutional investors, and then within institutional investors it talks about the key needs and key features and key requirements of some of the institutional investors, such as pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, university endowments and private foundations, and banks and insurance. So how we will do this reading is that I will give you the key points or discuss the key features of each of these funds, and then there are further details mentioned on the slides that you can read through. So key types of institutional investors include defined benefit and defined contribution pension plans, sovereign wealth funds, university endowments, private foundations, banks and insurance companies, that you already know about, that you have learned in previous levels as well. Common characteristics with respect to individual investors. So generally these institutional investors have larger size than individuals. They generally have longer time horizon compared to individuals. Regulatory framework is also different, like for example their tax rule, their tax laws for them, accounting laws, accounting rules, regulatory requirements, all that differ from individuals. Governance framework is more robust or is more formal. They tend to have board of directors, investment committee, investment managers, etc. Principal agent issues. So there could be conflict of interest within institutional investment due to investment committee and staff and external managers. So there could be a conflict of interest between these. So these all are the key differences between institutional and individual investors, or these are the some characteristics for which institutional investors are different from individual investors. So remember these. Now moving on. Investment policy statement. So you already know what investment policy statement is. You already know what all it includes. So we didn't go into the details because this is something that you know very well, which you have learned in previous levels as well, that it includes mission and investment objectives, discussion of investment horizon and liabilities, external constraints, asset allocation, rebalancing policy, reporting requirements. All this is included or written down in the investment policy statement, and then that document is followed for investment management. This IPS is aligned between investment manager and the investment manager and the client, and then both agree to follow this document, and then all the decisions are taken with respect to this document or in alignment with this document. Over time, capital market expectations can change. As you know, the economic changes could occur, and over time institutional requirements might also change, or characteristics might also change. And so whenever any of these changes, that requires a change in IPS. So this means that IPS needs to be reviewed and updated, and IPS should be updated at least annually. So it should be reviewed at least annually. The frequency could be more than that, but at least annually it is required to be reviewed. Moving on, general asset allocation approaches. So basically this table provides you the general asset allocation approaches used by different kinds of institutions. So for example, Norway's sovereign wealth fund use a passively managed allocation and with a 60% in equity, 40% in bond. And then it gives you the advantages and disadvantages for each of these approaches as well. Like for example, if it is passive, then obviously low cost and fees, easy for board to comprehend. Disadvantages, as it is passive, so no opportunity for outperformance of markets. Then Yale University endowment asset allocation, high allocation to alternative investment, and the reason for this could be that it would be a very long term horizon investment fund with lesser liquidity requirements. Significant active management, externally managed assets. Advantages that as it is actively managed and it is investing into alternative investments as well, there is potential for outperforming the market. And disadvantages are that as it is disadvantages are that Yale University endowment being a very large endowment fund could bear with it, but it is difficult for small institutions without expertise in alternative investment, because as you know that we have already studied, alternative investments require expertise or a greater expertise or skill to manage. It may also be difficult for large managers due to capacity issues of external managers and high fees and costs, because it is first of all it is active management, so high fees, and then it also requires the skill of alternative investment manager, and so high fees. Then Canada pension plan, high allocation to alternative, significant active management, internally managed assets, use a reference portfolio of passive public assets. Advantages: potential for outperformance, so as it is active management, again potential for outperformance. Disadvantage: potentially expensive and difficult to manage. Liability driven asset allocation is focused on maximizing expected surplus, that is your assets in comparison to liabilities should increase, and manage surplus volatility, that is that surplus is invested for at a higher risk. Advantage: explicitly recognize liabilities as part of investment process, so there is more chances of you being able to meet the liabilities. Disadvantage: certain risk of liabilities, for example longevity, because you would have estimated liability to last for a specific period of time, but maybe it tends to it stretches over a longer period of time, and so certain risk of liabilities are difficult to hedge. So for example, if you have a liability to pay a person till he lives, and you estimated the remaining life of the person to be 25 years. If he lives for 30 years, then that 5 years difference is your longevity risk, or this is a risk which is difficult to hedge because you did not estimate it. So if you look into all these approaches, generally the key theme is that you can either go for active management or you can go for passive management. If you go for active management, then you will have a benefit or advantage of outperforming market, but then the disadvantage is that the fee will be higher. And if you go for passive management, then the advantage is that the fee will be lower and it will be easier to manage, and the disadvantage will be that you will not have any opportunity for outperformance. Maximum what you will do is generally perform in line with the broader market. So these are some examples of general asset allocation approaches. Key discussion points in this reading: for every institution type which we discussed, like pension funds, endowments, banks, insurance companies, this reading will talk about all of those institutions one by one. So and for all of those institutions, it will first talk about main features, then stakeholders, and then other elements such as liabilities, investment horizon, liquidity needs, external constraints, investment objectives, asset allocation. So this is the structure which will be used throughout the reading one by one for every institution to understand the needs and requirements or objectives of institutions. So now starting with the first institution, which is pension funds. Within pension funds, there could be two types: defined benefit pension funds and defined contribution pension fund. Defined benefit pension fund are those in which the fund sponsor or the employer defines the benefit which is to be paid to the retiree or the beneficiary. So benefit is defined that this is X amount, for example, will be paid to retiree or beneficiary in future, and in order to provide that benefit, this employer will make contribution to the fund and will manage this fund. So benefit is defined and the employer has to pay that benefit to the retiree. The risk of this fund is more associated with employer, because the beneficiary retiree is guaranteed the benefit. The beneficiary retiree knows how much will he receive in future. Now in order to be able to pay that amount to the retiree, for example the amount is $10,000 which is to be paid in future. Now in order to be able to pay this $10,000 to retiree, employer will manage this fund, and if he or she if this fund generates enough returns to pay this 10,000, then that is well and good. If this fund does not generate enough returns, then employer will have to make more contributions to the fund in order to be able to pay it. So the risk in defined benefit pension plan, the risk lies with employer. Employer takes the risk because employer has the uncertainty, that is, if in future fund does not generate enough return, then employer will need to contribute more. While on the other hand, in defined contribution plan, employer contributes a certain amount, agrees to contribute certain amount and manages that fund, and then whatever that fund generates is paid to retirees or beneficiaries. So if this fund generates more returns, that is benefit to them. If this fund generates lesser return, that is a risk to retirees or beneficiaries, not to employer. Employer has more certainty because employer is contributing a certain amount, not more, not less, and then and the risk is borne by retirees or beneficiaries. That is, if this fund generates more return, that is good for them. If it generates less return, that is bad for retirees or beneficiaries. Employer has contributed what it had to contribute, so it does not guarantee future. So DC funds are better for employers because their risk is lower, risk for employer is lower. DB funds are kind of better for retirees because the risk for retirees is lower. Main features: benefit payments, that they make payments of benefits to the retirees or pension holders or pensioners or beneficiaries. So payments are need to be made from the fund. Contributions, that is contribution into the fund. Employer contributes into the fund to be able to make these payments. Investment decision making, so once contribution has been made, then it is invested, the fund is invested to generate returns, and so that is the investment decision making is required. Investment risk, so in defined benefit plan, investment risk is faced by sponsor, employer, as we discussed, and in defined contribution it is faced by beneficiary. Mortality or longevity risk, that is the risk of this of the beneficiaries outliving the expected age or outliving the expected time period. So these all are the characteristics of these features with respect to defined benefit and defined contribution plan. And as we have already discussed the differences between these two, you should be able to understand the differences between each of these characteristics as well. So just go through it and should be fairly simple. Remember that there could also be a hybrid plan which exhibits features of both DB plan as well as DC plan. So for example, a cash balance plan involves a sponsor defining contribution to assets which are then pooled. The sponsor faces some of the investment risk as per DB plan. So there could be a plan in which a sponsor makes specific contributions but also have some risk associated with it. That is, also have some risk for some promises for future payment. That could be a combination of defined benefit and defined contribution plan. So there could be hybrid plans as well. So go through these and should be fairly simple. Stakeholders for defined benefit plans. So stakeholders for defined benefit plans and defined contribution are almost similar. So these include plan sponsors, which are employers which make contributions to the fund to pay for their retirees. Plan beneficiaries, which are retirees who receive payments from the fund. Investment staff, investment committee or the board. Investment staff is the staff which manages the investment committee which decides where to invest, how much to invest, and the board which overlooks the investment staff performance to ensure that they are managing the fund in line with the objectives of IPS. Governments which often provide tax incentives or tax exemptions to retirement income. Shareholders are the shareholders of the company which is, or the sponsor or the employer which is making contributions. So they are shareholders, and they are important stakeholders because with company making a contribution into the fund, that contribution is going from the company, and so the owners of the company, that is a loss to the owners of the company. If company hasn't made sufficient contributions to the fund, and in future if it has to make more contributions to the fund in order to meet liabilities, then that will be an outflow from the company, and so that will be an outflow from the shareholders. And you can go through the text for details. So liabilities and investment horizon for defined benefit plan. So liability is the present value of all future benefits promised to plan participants. The future benefits that you will be paying in future, present value of all those benefits is liability. It can increase or decrease over time depending on retirees, number of retirees, their age, etc. Vesting conditions which are required to be met by participants for getting benefits. So for example, you might state that an employee need to work for a minimum X years with the company to be able to receive the benefits. Funded ratio, which is fair value of plan assets divided by present value of obligations. So this tells you the comparison of assets with liabilities. If it is equal to 1, that means your assets are sufficient to meet the are only sufficient to meet the liabilities. If it is greater than 1, that means you are in surplus, your assets are larger than liabilities, and so it is a good position. And if it is less than 1, that means there is a problem. Your assets are and your plan is underfunded. Your assets are lower compared to liabilities, and so you need to contribute more and generate higher return. Plan beneficiaries can be split into two. There could be active life, there could be retired lives. Active lives, those still employed and earning benefits, and retired lives, those receiving benefit payments. Higher proportion of retired lives results in shorter time horizon for the plan, and so if time horizon is shorter, because that means number of retirees is very large, and so you have to make a large amount of payments in terms of benefits, and so you have a smaller time horizon, and when you have a smaller time horizon, risk tolerance is also lower. Frozen plans are those plans which are closed to new participants, in which new participants cannot come in, and as new participants cannot come in, that means they also tend to have a large portion of these would also tend to have retired lives only. So as they have more retired lives, they have shorter time horizon, and so lack of new active lives joining the plan, and as they have shorter time horizon, they have lower risk tolerance as well. So generally, funds with more active lives, longer time horizon could have higher risk tolerance, and the funds with more retired lives and shorter time horizon would have lower risk tolerance. So remember this point, this is important. When you are analyzing a fund, when you are given a case study, when you are analyzing a fund, this is the key thing to look at. That is number of active lives and retired lives, and also the time horizon basis on that, and with respect to time horizon, that you can arrive at risk tolerance. Defined benefit pension plan liability factors. So all these are liability factors. That is, if someone works for more number of years, liability will increase. If someone has higher salary, then there will be increased liability for pension, because pension will depend, or retirement benefits will depend on salary. Longevity, if someone outlives the estimated life, then liability increases. Employee turnover, if there are more employees leaving the job and switching to other organizations, then that decreases the liability. Why? Because then these employees who have switched from the fund before retirement, they wouldn't be eligible for retirement benefits. Additional matching contributions increases liability, because this increases the benefits promised to employees. Expected investment return, so if your return is higher on the fund, then your eventually liability will decrease a bit. So, and also expected investment return is the discount rate which you will use to calculate present value of liabilities. So if this is higher, then the present value of liabilities will come out to be lower. Discount rate lowers liabilities. At a higher discount rate would mean that present value of benefits is lower. So you should be able to analyze or find out the impact of changes in any of these factors on the overall liability. So when analyzing any case study, when analyzing any case, make sure that you are able to analyze the impact of the changes in these factors on the overall liability, because as the liability changes, increases or decreases, that will impact the fund's risk tolerance or investment strategy. If liabilities have increased, then risk tolerance will become lower. If liabilities has decreased, then risk tolerance will become higher. Moving on, risk considerations for defined benefit plan. Plan funded status. Funded status tells you the ratio of assets to liabilities. If your funded status is higher, that means your risk tolerance is higher, because you have higher assets larger asset base compared to liabilities. Financial status of a sponsor. So if a sponsor is in a stronger position, then risk tolerance of plan will be better. Size of plan compared to a sponsor. If the size of plan is smaller compared to the overall size of a sponsor, then that means then that would have a greater risk tolerance, because then the sponsor is, if the sponsor is very large in size and this plan is a very small plan for a sponsor, then a sponsor would be able to make contributions to the plan easily. Common risk exposures. The lower the correlation of a sponsor operating results and return of pension assets, the greater the risk tolerance. Provision for early retirement lump sum distributions. Such plans generally imply a lower risk tolerance because there is more uncertainty, there are more liquidity requirements. If there is a provision that you might have to pay for early retirement. Workforce characteristics. If workforce is younger, then that means the active lives are higher, and if active lives are higher, that means the time horizon is longer, and so risk tolerance is higher. Liquidity needs. So pension plans must maintain enough liquidity to pay liabilities, and that are pension benefits. If there is higher liquidity, there are higher liquidity needs, that is there are more retired lives, then risk tolerance will be lower. If there are lower liquidity needs, that is more active lives, then risk tolerance will be higher. Liquidity needs depend on benefits being paid to retired lives and the sponsor contributions being made to the plan. If a sponsor make more contributions, then the plan assets will increase and liquidity needs will be lower, and if the benefits being paid to the retired lives is very large, then that would require more funds to be liquidated if a sponsor hasn't made enough contributions. So liquidity needs are generally higher when retired lives are higher. The workforce of the employer is older. Plan has higher funded status. Participants have the ability to switch or withdraw from the plan. So all this can lead to higher liquidity needs, and opposite of this can lead to lower liquidity needs. So again, remember all these factors, which should be helpful when you are given a case study and you are asked about the liquidity needs of a fund. External constraints include regulations, which would vary from country to country. There could be multiple regulations. One of the examples could be maintaining a minimum funded ratio. Tax is usually favorable for pension funds, and within tax there could be different tax rates on capital gains and dividends, which you need to analyze. Accounting rules. Corporate plans use generally accepted accounting principles, which require funded status to be reported. Public pension plans use GASB, which uses a blended approach for liabilities. That is, uses the expected return on plan assets as the discount rate for the funded portion of the liability, and a lower discount rate, the yield on tax exempt municipal bonds, for the unfunded portion. So for unfunded portion and funded portion calculation, a different discount rate is used in GASB. Investment objectives. So primary objective is to achieve target return over a specified long time horizon while assuming risk consistent with meeting contractual liabilities. So you should enough sufficient return over a longer time horizon to be able to meet liabilities. And secondary objective is to minimize the cash contributions which a sponsor will be required to provide. This will only happen if you are generating more returns. If you are generating higher returns, then the contributions required will be lower. If you end up generating lower returns on the fund, then the contributions required will be higher. So these are the key objectives for DB plan. Moving on to defined contribution plan. So defined contribution plan, the stakeholders are the same as what we discussed for defined benefit plan. Liabilities and investment horizon. So liability is the contribution required from the employer, and liability will be more certain compared to a DB plan. Generally, individuals in a DC plan have an investment horizon linked to their age, that is shorter horizon for older participants. Default life cycle option, there could be a default life cycle option as well in DC plan, which is known as target date option, in which asset mix is managed according to desired retirement date. And within this there could be participant switching options or participant cohort option. Participant switching option is that participant switches to more conservative asset allocation as their age increases, and participant or cohort option means pooling the participant with other investors with a similar retirement date. So all these could be different types or different options within DC plan. Liquidity depends on workforce age and participants' ability to switch or withdraw from the plan. If they have a higher ability to be able to withdraw from the plan or switch from the plan, then they might want to withdraw their money, and that would result in higher liquidity requirement. And if they do not have the ability to switch or withdraw, then that would mean lower liquidity needs. Regulations generally are requirement to educate participants on saving schemes. This is because employer is making contributions, and then when this fund generates returns, those are paid to as benefits to employees. And if this fund does not generate sufficient returns, then the benefits to the retirees will be lower. And so they need to be educated about the fund, about the saving schemes, so that their benefits are met. Tax, they could be tax deferred in some countries. Investment objectives, to grow assets to meet spending needs in retirement. If plan offers active management, a secondary objective may be to outperform passive active classes. If participants voluntarily switch between competing DC plans, outperforming DC plans may be an objective. So all these could be objectives. Generally for DB plan, the objective is to be able to lower down the liabilities and to be able to meet the liabilities, that is generate sufficient return to meet liabilities. And for DC plan is to generate sufficient return for the employees and as better as it could get for them. Asset allocation, this would vary by region and largely driven by differences in external constraints, risk appetite, and stakeholder preferences. Over the past decade, there has been a rotation from equities into alternative assets and fixed income to try to lower the volatility of funded ratios. Within equities, there is some evidence of home bias to domestic equity markets, that is, they tend to invest into domestic markets. And overall, the allocation will obviously depend on the risk appetite or constraints and stakeholder preferences of the fund. So this is about pension funds. Now moving on to next one, which is sovereign wealth funds. Main features and mission. There could be budget stabilization funds, there could be development funds, there could be savings funds, there could be reserve funds, there could be pension reserve funds. So sovereign wealth funds, as you know, are the funds by the country or by the national government of the country, and they could be used for these different purposes: budget stabilization, development, savings, reserve, and pension reserve fund. So budget stabilization funds are set up when nations' revenues are heavily linked to a natural resource or other cyclical industries to insulate government budgets from commodity price volatility or economic cycles. Development funds are for the development purposes for socio-economic projects, for example, infrastructure or supporting key industries. Saving funds are to invest revenues from non-renewable assets for the benefit of future generations. Reserve funds earn returns on excess foreign reserves held by central banks, and pension reserve funds are used to save and invest to meet future pension liabilities of government. So these all are the purposes of the funds, and obviously the objectives of the fund or the asset allocation would vary from mission to mission, or would vary for each of these types. Stakeholders, current and future citizens, obviously, because it is either being managed for the benefit of current citizens or for the future citizens. Investment offices, which invest the sovereign wealth fund assets either directly in-house or appoint external managers. Board, which has a duty to the ultimate beneficiaries of the fund. So board looks after the investment offices. or keeps an eye over investment management and investment offices to ensure that they are working in the interest of beneficiaries, and obviously the government, because they would rely on sovereign wealth fund returns to meet their objectives. So all these are stakeholders for sovereign wealth funds. Liabilities and time horizon, again this would vary, as we discussed earlier, could vary from fund to fund or the type of fund. So for budget stabilization, liabilities are uncertain because they are linked to changes in commodity prices. Time horizon is short term, so as the liability is uncertain, then obviously time horizon is short term. Development, for development funds, liabilities are linked to socio-economic investments. Some have longer time horizon, for example infrastructure projects, and some have medium term time horizon like medical research. Savings funds, liabilities are linked to future generations, and so time horizon is very long term. Reserve liabilities are technically the yield promised on bonds issued by government or central bank. Investment horizons are very long. Pension funds, liabilities are linked to future pension payments, therefore long term. Fund may have an accumulation stage in which contributions are made and a decumulation phase where benefits are drawn. Time horizon will depend on when these stages occur. So these are different liabilities and time horizons for these different types of funds. Liquidity needs will again vary from fund to fund. For budget stabilization, they need to maintain highest liquidity. So why? Because they have more uncertainty over liability, they have shorter time horizon and higher liquidity needs, and so their overall risk tolerance will also be lower. For development funds, they are generally long term and so generally have low liquidity needs, so there is more certainty over liabilities, and so they have a longer time horizon and they have lower liquidity needs, and so their risk tolerance will be higher. Saving funds, to accumulate wealth for future generations, so again very long term time horizon and so lower liquidity needs, and so their risk tolerance will also be higher. Reserve funds, liquidity needs are lower compared to stabilization funds but higher compared to savings funds, so somewhere between stabilization and savings funds. Pension funds, liquidity needs vary, being lower during accumulation stage and higher during decumulation stage. So when you are accumulating all funds, then it will be liquidity need will be lower because you are contributing more to the fund and the payments are lower. But when you go into disbursement phase, then the liquidity needs will be higher. So remember the characteristics of each of these types of funds. External constraints, legal and regulatory perspective, clear rules of asset allocation, high quality governance, independence, transparency and accountability are crucial because political influence could impact that. Tax, they are generally tax exempt, and care should be taken when investing internationally to ensure double taxation treaties exist when subject to withholding taxes abroad. So these are some key external constraints. Investment objectives, so again would vary from fund to fund. For budget stabilization, it is preservation of capital. For development, to support nations' economic development. Savings, for savings, to maintain purchasing power parity of assets over time. For reserve, earn a rate of return in excess of government central bank yield. Pension reserve, earn returns to meet future unfunded payments and social care payments. So go through these and remember the objectives of each of these types of funds. Asset allocation, budget stabilization, you know that their risk tolerance is lower and so majority is invested in fixed income and cash. Development funds, these are driven by socio-economic mission of the fund, for example investment in local infrastructure projects. Savings funds, long investment horizon, most high allocations towards equities because risk tolerance is very high, because time horizon is higher, because liquidity needs are lower, so more to equities and alternative investments. Reserve funds, allocations are similar to those of savings funds, but with lower allocation to alternatives because their time horizon is shorter compared to savings fund. Pension reserve funds have high allocation to equities and alternatives due to long investment horizon and low liquidity needs. So as you know, during the accumulation phase. So as you know that if a fund has a longer time horizon, lower liquidity needs, then their risk tolerance is higher, and if their risk tolerance is higher, they will invest more into equities. And if their time horizon is very long, then they will also invest more into alternative investments. On the other hand, if a fund has lower, shorter time horizon, higher liquidity needs, then their risk tolerance will be lower, and so they will invest more into fixed income. So on the basis of characteristics of the fund, you should be able to assess that what kind of asset allocation should be better for that particular fund.